Okay, well, I'm not as nervous anymore because there's just something about being with you all and getting to hear you worship like that. Um, First of all, you guys in the back, it's like the opposite now. I can't see you. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's dark back there. But can you see better up here? Those that have been used to being back there, is there a better light up here? Can you tell? Actually, I can't tell what you're saying because I can't see you anyway. So unless you say something, I don't know. But it was kind of cracking me up to look in the back and just see it be so dark back there. I don't know if you've looked around and noticed there have been some changes that have been made to the building. Before all of this happened, we were really close to our annual business meeting. We were about ready to have that, and the board and the council and them had been getting together and been working to do that. And we had already made plans to do some things to the building. We've been hearing what people have been saying, some of the concerns, some of the requests. And so some of those things included, we wanted to get new lighting in the back that we could dim so it was easier to see up here. We're actually wanting to get new lighting in here, but we want to bring in some professionals to tell us what we need to do on that. We wanted to get some monitors up back there, as you can see, because we've been told, especially when you stand to sing, hey, I can't see the words up here, because it's a lot easier to put in a couple monitors than to try and raise that ceiling underneath you. And so we had all kinds of different projects that were going to be taking place, and we were going to be introducing the concept of a family growth fund, where as people gave, we would give. The other thing we were going to do was get new seating for the back. What you are sitting on back there turned into just a different gift. Those were the old chairs that were in the high school library, I believe. We got a call from them a couple weeks ago and said, do you guys want these chairs? And they got a grant there, so they got new chairs in there. So it wasn't what we had planned, but we were able to get you a little more comfortable seating that was a little bit more uniformed and hopefully a little more inviting. We were told before it wasn't the super inviting look to try and throw chairs together when we're needing into the overflow. So some of these things were things that we were already going to be working on. And the one beauty of this whole thing is it made us stop and actually get done the things that we were talking about. And so some of these changes were coming, but now we're able to get them in place. There's going to be some stuff done outside. If there's some more rock that's been put in the parking lot, this is going to be, hopefully the plan is in September around the elevator in that section around there. They're going to be pouring concrete. They're going to finally be getting that part done. And so there have been projects that have still been taking place, and I hope that it's as we've come back together to be able to, just the time we're in, but also overall, make this an experience when you're here that is easier for everybody to be able to fully engage and experience what's taking place, whether it just be seeing words or just being able to, whatever it takes. I hope that that's helped. And so these are some of the things, some of the different things that I mentioned in the email that went out that we do want to make sure you know about is we won't be passing the plate, at least for a while. But that box back there that's been at the park, that is we're just calling it our giving box. If you bring an offering, please put it in the box. And then if you still feel more comfortable saying, hey, I kind of got used to just mailing it to the church, then we'll take it that way too. We're still have online. If you go to our website, you can give online also in that way. But that will kind of be a more normal long-term solution to having this box back here. So we just want to make sure you know it's there. And also, if you look around, there's hand sanitizer stations all around the buildings. I will tell you now, right now, I am less worried about you having sanitized hands than I am about you having a broken ankle if you use one of those. And the reason why is because they got the wrong cases for the lotion that came with it. It's supposed to be foamy, but if you've used one, put your hands together. Otherwise, it's going to be wet all over the floor below you. They're supposed to be bringing them in. Hopefully by next week, we'll get them all replaced out. But right now, if you squirt one, I'm just giving you a warning. If your hand's not cupped, you're going to shoot it all over the place down there, okay? So now I know everybody's going to try it at the end when they leave just to see. But those are in there, and they'll be fixed and hopefully put back in place by the time next week rolls around. Obviously, a lot of things are really hard to get right now, and with that kind of stuff. So some of those we're still waiting on them to get in. We've also been working on an updated church sign with the actual newer Church of God logo and something to refresh there. That's been worked on. The sign's all designed and ready to go. We just can't get plexiglass to put in it at the moment. So we're waiting on that too. So there's just been projects taking place, and we'll keep you updated as we go along. But again, I've shared this with you before. One of the main reasons that we're able to do this is because of your faithfulness to continue giving, to continue to be involved, continue to be a part of what's going on, even though you may not have been able to physically be there and be a part of what's going on, or even always know what was going on. I shared a while back, way back towards the beginning of this, you guys supplied pizzas to the hospital all day long on one day. And I can't even remember how many pizzas we got now, but there's more people working there than I thought, apparently, because there was a lot of pizzas that went out. But we couldn't have done that if you hadn't continued to give and support and be involved in that way. What we have coming up here that I do want to let you know about is we're going to be doing a law enforcement appreciation meal. We've had somebody that's donated 40 pounds of meat and wants to do that. And I went down and talked to the sheriff, and we're settling on a date. I think it's the 22nd or the 29th of September, if I don't quote me on those, but it's close to that. One of the last 2 weekends of September, where we're going to go either to the courthouse lawn or to the swimming pool park again and just provide a barbecue for our law enforcement. And they're going to start getting the word out. As you know, we're in a time that it might be a good idea to tell your law enforcement, we do appreciate you. I know we don't deal with it here like they do in some of the cities, but still, even when we told them about it, they were thankful to even hear that. So it'll be simple, which they like that. It can be a little come and go, but we're just going to provide and say, hey, we appreciate you. So again, wouldn't be able to do that if that weren't for you. And in the midst of this, even though we couldn't be together, still being involved in that way. So again, I want to just tell you thank you for doing that, for keeping things going as we continue to try and keep things going. The last thing I do want to let you know about real quick is the plan is this last week was focused on getting us back to this point. This coming week, be watching your emails, be watching Facebook, but we're going to open up an opportunity for maybe some online, I guess we'll call them Bible study classes, utilizing the Right Now Media video that we have access to, that we also bought during this time, that all of you have free access to, actually, which if you've heard me describe it before, I call it just the Netflix of church devotions. There's little TV shows for kids, all that kind of stuff. We're hoping to utilize it in our services for our children, since we don't have children's church stuff going on right now. But we also want to start, we're going to choose a couple of them specifically and invite you to online be a part of a group that watches these videos, that if we want to have discussions through it, we will. If you want to just do it on your own, but know you're doing it with many others, you have that opportunity. And the plan right now is that we're going to probably be following one by a pastor, Matt Chandler, if you've ever heard of him. Pretty well-known pastor, great speaker, great communicator, great heart. But he's got one on Psalm 23. And as I looked through that, I just felt like this, I think, would be an appropriate one to really start with for us. And so be watching your emails. We'll try and describe it as well as we can. If for some reason we can't describe it well, we'll do it in person next week, and we'll have stuff on the screen for you on how to be a part of that. And then following it, we are going to go into a series on, I don't know what else to call it, but on spiritual disciplines, on disciplining ourselves to grow in Christ and these things we've talked about. And we have some video to go with that will follow that through the week. So in an attempt to try and help connect us and keep us together, walking together, these are some things we're going to be putting out there for you. So be watching your emails and Facebook. We still want to get more on Faith Life if we can, because we'd love to turn into a lot of our communication on Faith Life. Pretty soon, I know it's hard to believe, the snow's going to start flying, and we may have a day where we call a snow day, and we want to be able to just get on Faith Life and say, no church today, boom, we've got that covered. So the more we can get people connected on there, the easier that will be. All right? Is there anything I might have forgotten? I promised not to take a long time doing announcements and stuff. And there's a bet that I can't have us out of here by 11:15 too. So anyway, I don't want to take all the time in announcements. Judy Beaker is going to be coming August 29th at what time? At 9:30 to speak to our women. How are you having the sign up for that? I guess it's just a show up thing downstairs. And again, just a reminder, I don't even know if there's anybody down there, but we do have it set up right now downstairs, even if you want to go take a look later, where we are live streaming right now to the basement for anybody that might be down there. But we have access to that TV, but also this case, I think it's just going to be Judy speaking. But Judy Beaker is going to be coming for any women at 9:30 on August 29th to just share some things that are on her heart with our women downstairs. So mark that on your calendars, which Your calendar right now is that little blue notebook that we handed to you. That is yours. That is for you to bring every week. We're not going to be handing out bulletins, but if you hear something and want to write that date down, or if I actually make a good point in the message, you can write that down too and use that in your journals. And each week, we won't give you a new each week, obviously, but if you use it all up, just let them know. We hope to continue to provide these for everybody. We also have packets for the children. Did they get one today? We got little kids activity packets that they'll bring with them each week. And for those parents, we'll be sending out an email for those parents that are here for you to print off the next activity for the next week. Okay, so any other thing I might have missed? All right, and we're going to jump into this. I'm going to ask you to open, if you have your phones or Bibles, to John 8 real quick as we go into this. And I'm going to just share on something really, again, that's fairly simple. But it came to me after, or it came up after last week's message of being reminded of what our greatest call as followers of Jesus is. Can anybody remind me that was here what ultimately we are called to do as followers of Jesus? Love one another, and I thought I heard something else at the same time. Love God and love one another. The truth is, they go hand in hand. I mean, if you really read that, Jesus says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and then depending on which gospel you're reading, all your strength. That is the first and greatest commandment, he says. But then he says, and the second is like it. When he actually first quoted this, when he first responded that this was the greatest commandment, when those guys were coming and trying to trick him and say, hey, teacher, what's the greatest commandment? When they were trying to trap him and he threw that out there, they would have all said, you're right. That is the greatest commandment. That is what we're called to do. And they were living in a time where they agreed with that the main thing they were to do was to love God with everything they had. The thing is at that time, their whole image and their whole idea of what loving God was a vertical type of thing. It was we're here, God's here, and I'm going to act in such a way, and I'm going to worship him like we just did in such a way, and I'm going to go to this temple or the synagogue in such a way that I'm going to have these moments where I'm just talking to an invisible God, and that's how I'm going to love God, and then I'm going to try and live by all these rules, over 600 rules and laws that they'd put in place to show that I love God. That was their idea, but they did not disagree with Jesus when he said the greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and your strength. They were in agreement with that. Where he threw them for a loop was when he didn't stop there. And we often think that he gave a second commandment, but he really didn't. He gave a second part to the commandment. Because after he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength, he went on to say, and I could just picture him going, okay, he's right, he got it. He would probably surprise him when he goes, and the second is like it. In other words, also, the second is equal to, the second is an extension of it. A second is part of it. And he goes on and says, the rest of that, in other words, is also love your neighbor as yourself. What he did was just actually basically said, loving God is proven by how you love your neighbor. So he turned it from a vertical type of love to a horizontal type of love. You know, we live since Jesus came, as followers of him, we cannot say that we love God and not love our neighbor. You can't do it. I can't walk around and tell everybody how much I love God and be judgmental towards my neighbor, or gossip about my neighbor, or fight and hate my neighbor. It doesn't work hand in hand, because if I don't love my neighbor, I'm not loving God. Now, I say that knowing that we all do that to a point, and he understands that, and we're going to struggle with it, but we at least need to have the concept in our mind that that's what he considers loving him. Coming to church on a Sunday morning and singing worship songs is not what he defines as loving God. Coming to church, period, is not what he defines as loving God. Reading our Bible every morning and having quiet time with him is not what he defines as loving God. All of that is good to help us understand how to love him and why we love him and why he loves us, and it helps us get to know him. But the way that we show that we love God is by how we love our neighbor. That is the ultimate litmus test as to whether we love God. And in another time in Jesus' ministry, he was sharing something similar, and someone goes, well, who's my neighbor? And then Jesus really throws them for a loop by making the neighbor somebody that they grew up learning to hate, who is of a different culture and a different nationality. And I mean, he really messed it up. So basically, he ended up saying, your neighbor is anybody within the ripple effect of your life. And if you can't make it your aim to try and love them, you still don't quite get it. And you can't say you don't love them and turn around and tell everybody how much you love me. So that's where he threw them for a loop. And that's what I threw out last week. And that's what we, I think, need to continue to make our goal. Again, like I said, I myself struggle with this. I gossip. I get irritated. I talk about people. The decision I need to make is if I just go, that's okay, I still say I love God and I go to church, or if I go, man, I still don't get it yet, I got to work on this. I still need to figure this out. God, help me. Lord, I need you. That's what it comes down to there, because we're all going to struggle. But I shared that last week. That's our goal. That's what we're called to do. That's our ultimate calling. But afterwards, someone from this congregation came up to me and said, I don't remember, what'd you call it, Cindy? An aha moment? Or an O moment? And said, and I can't remember exactly how you said it, but it was something along the lines of, most people struggle with loving their neighbor because they don't love themselves. And truthfully, we're teaching more and more all the time our young people not to love yourselves. You're not okay. You're not good enough. The way we're setting things up, it's really hard for them to love even themselves. And this really stuck with me when Cindy shared this. It's not necessarily a new concept. If you talk to counselors and psychologists, and they'll say the first thing you need to do is learn to accept and love yourself, because you can't help somebody else. You can't. That's that whole, if the airplane's going down and the face mask come down, where are you supposed to put it on first? Yourself. You've got to be able to take care of yourself and love yourself, or you just physically cannot do that. Somebody, and I don't remember who it was this time, had something on Facebook about you can't really give anything out of an empty cup. And so if you don't love yourself, how are you going to give love to somebody else? And that has been on my mind since she said that all week. And I thought, we need to be reminded that we should love ourselves. Not because we're just so good, but because God loves us. Because we're somebody. Actually, what it made me think of again is back when I was in Newberg, in Oregon, I would have a weekly Wendy's date with my grandma Helbling at the time. In fact, part of it was kind of funny because we would always go, where do you want to go? And then we'd go through all these decisions about where we should go, and we usually ended up at Wendy's. I still have it, I made a little board for her, I don't remember if it was a birthday or something, that I just put all the options in town on there, and then you flicked it, and whatever it landed on, that's where we went. The thing is, we never used it because we still went to Wendy's when it was done. And the reason for that was two things, really. I mean, we liked Wendy's, but also it was cheap. And if you know my grandma, we're going cheap. And she would even offer to buy my meal as long as I got chili and a baked potato. She goes, you can go get anything you want, just order chili and a baked potato, was the way that she would actually say it. I don't even know that she realized she was saying it that way. But I would go and I would have chili and a baked potato with my grandma Helbling quite often. Every once in a while we splurged and she let me get a Frosty when it was done too. But there are moments that I will always remember. But one time when I walked into our Wendy's, I noticed a sign, an application that was on the door. And I think I have a picture. I actually got it and copied it. I have a picture of it up here. And it said this. It said, everybody's somebody at Wendy's. Application attached up above it. Do it for yourself. Seize the opportunity today. But for whatever reason, there was something about this sign this one day that I walked in when I saw this, everybody's somebody at Wendy's. Why would they care if someone felt that way when they came in? Why would they put a sign like that up there for part of an application? Because Wendy's got something. They realized that no matter who you were, they realized that no matter what you have been through, I'm sure they did have some legal things they couldn't allow, but for the most part, no matter who you were and what you've been through and what abilities or disabilities you may or may not have, it's still worth applying because to them, everybody is somebody. And I believe they would actually try and find a place. And the thing that almost made it more ironic, but not really ironic, more meaningful was the main guy that we would see every time we went in. And when you go to, it's like here, when you go to Wendy's, you see all kinds of people that could be serving you. You see all different kinds of dress, all different kinds of personality, all different kinds of look. And it was the same way there. But there was always a staple. Every time we went in, there was one kid that would go around and he would clean the tables and he would offer to get us a refill on our drinks. And he would even take our trays for us and put them away. It was like you were sitting in a restaurant, not Wendy's. And he would come around every single time and he would offer this. And then he would start visiting with us. But the thing that made it unique was he was what we would call slow. He was one that most people would say, yeah, he's not good enough to do this. He's not somebody, I guess. He's not worth whatever. But because Wendy's had this kind of a mentality, they saw something in him that gave him a chance. And I got to tell you, it's probably the best Wendy's that I've ever gone to as far as customer service. And he's the main reason why. But it all started because they believed everybody's somebody at Wendy's. And I thought of that a lot this week after Cindy made that comment because Wendy's got it. But Jesus got it too. And a lot of his message was him trying to help us understand and get this concept also. Because we do live in a culture that tries to often say, no, you don't got it. You're not somebody. You're not good enough. That's why in his ministry, he would often say different things to help us try and comprehend this reality. And he would say things like, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside of your Father's care. And all the hairs on your head are numbered, which I'll never forget a teacher that brought that up one time and says, do you realize how personal of a statement that is? Jesus knows the number of hairs on your head. The only way that he can know the number of hairs on your head is by being so close to you each and every day. And you know how I know that? How many of you took a shower this morning before you came? How many cleaned some hair out of the tub? Our hair numbers change every day. But he knows how many hairs are on our head. So Jesus is going, aren't not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? But God takes care of them. But he takes even so much care of you that he even knows how many hairs are on your head. So don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. He would share stuff like this because he wanted us and those listening to understand what those that were applying at Wendy's to understand. Everybody is somebody. And in fact, when he said everybody, he meant everybody. That's why one of the most famous verses in the world is this: for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. It doesn't say for God so loved Waukene, but not Portland, because they're really messed up right now. Or God so loved Kansas, but not Washington, because did you see what's going on in that place? No, he said, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. And then where we end it is there, but he goes on and says, God did not send his son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Why? Because everybody's worth it. Everybody is somebody. Oh, no, not everybody. Have you read about? I have. Have you read about a guy named Saul, who's now called Paul? Everybody is somebody. We're worthwhile. That's why we can say it is okay to love ourselves as ones created by God. And he didn't just say these things, he also showed them in his ministry. And that's what I want to look at today, John chapter 8. I want to read a story that's quite common. I'm sure it won't be the first time you've heard it. But in John chapter 8, there's a weird moment. I think there's been weird things that have happened in my ministry, but I got to say, I've never had something like this ever take place in anything I've ever done. I guess I came close in a baptism once, but that's about as close as we are. But it says in John chapter 8, we're going to start at verse 2. It says, "At dawn, he, being Jesus, appeared again in the temple courts, where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them." Just imagine a moment like this. Everybody shows up, they gather around, sits down to teach. We're all chill, we're all hanging out, we're getting ready to hear what's on. I guess in here would be my mind to pretend like I'm Jesus and he's here, and you're going, "What do you got to say today, Jesus? What's going on?" All the people are sitting down, waiting on him to teach them, and then all of a sudden there's a commotion. We start hearing the doors open, we start hearing yelling, and we start hearing people walk through and knocking the hand sanitizers off the wall because they don't care. They're just coming in and they got one point going on. And also we hear this commotion, and it says the teachers of the law and the Pharisees come walking in, but they don't come walking in alone. They walk in bringing in a woman caught in the act of adultery. Not one they heard about that commits adultery, not one that was written about on Facebook and they went and found her, one that was literally caught in the act of adultery. Makes you wonder, how did they bring her in? Did they at least clothe her and save the humiliation there? Or did they say, "Nope, we got you, and you are part of a pawn in a political, religious battle we got going on, and we don't care, we are bringing you in"? I have no idea. But the way they're acting makes you think they really didn't care about saving her face at all. It says they brought in this woman caught in the act of adultery, and they made her stand before the group, and they said to Jesus, "Teacher, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law of Moses, it has commanded us to stone such women. Now what do you say?" They were using this question as a trap in order to have a basis for accusing him. I don't know what you would do if this happened and took place here. I'm sure we'd all be like, "Man, this is the craziest service I've ever been a part of, and I've never listened this close." But I'm guessing we would all lean in and go, "What is he about to say?" And what Jesus does is, it says he bends down and he starts to write on the ground with his finger. Sometime I encourage you, Google what people think he was writing and doing when he did that. It's interesting. But it says he starts to write on the ground with his finger. And when they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and he said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And then it says again, he stooped down and he wrote on the ground. And slowly but surely at this, those who heard began to go away one at a time, the older ones first, until only Jesus was left. And he was left there with the woman still standing there. So Jesus straightened up and he asked her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one condemned you?" "No one, sir," she said. "Well, then neither do I condemn you," Jesus declared. "So go now and leave your life of sin." My guess is you have probably heard this moment in his ministry before, that this isn't new to you. But you know, every time I hear this or I read this, I think about the Pharisees and the teachers of the law and their motivation that they came in and did this with. I think about how evil their intent was, and how arrogant and how ignorant and how just flat out mean it was to use this woman in this way. I think about Jesus' response in this moment, which is what we often catch on, and how he does not condemn her and he puts them in their place in the process. But how often have we stopped and put ourselves in the shoes of this woman? How often have we stopped and thought about maybe how she was feeling at this time? How often have we stopped and maybe thought about why she was involved with what she was doing at that moment? And think of her. We often judge her, as most people do, by her actions in the moment, but very rarely do we stop and think about why she would be acting this way in the first place. Why would she put herself in that position? And the truth is, we don't know. We don't know why she did it because it doesn't tell us. We can only speculate off of things that maybe we've learned from others that may be in a similar situation. But when I stop and I think about it, I wonder, is there a chance that maybe she grew up with some bad role models in her life and had an upbringing in her life that that's all she knew and thought that's what you're supposed to do? Maybe her mom was involved with the same thing. Maybe there was stuff that happened and that's what she saw growing up. And in her mind, that's what you do. Maybe she had had bad, unhealthy, or unfulfilling relationships with other important men in her life, which is often the case, and this was the response. Maybe she'd been abused growing up. I don't think it's a secret that many young women that are sexually abused when they're younger grow up very confused about how to respond with that and find themselves in places and positions that we look at and go, how could she do that? Maybe she grew up with that. You know, the men weren't really gentlemen a lot of times in that day and in that culture. Maybe she just had bad relationships before. Maybe she dated a few other guys and she'd been treated pretty crappy through it all and just decided, this is where I'm going with this. Maybe it was with her own father and never had that father figure, that other man, that healthy relationship with another man in her life. But whatever the case, maybe she'd had bad and unhealthy and unfulfilling relationships in her life. Maybe she'd been hurt and picked on while growing up, and this was the only way where she felt it wouldn't happen or she could make up for those hurtful experiences. Maybe her whole life she'd been going through her schooling and she was always the one picked on, but when she grew up to be a woman and noticed, hey, men pay attention to that, maybe that's what led her to go, this is what I'll use to make up for what happened to me when I was younger. Maybe she'd already messed up early in life, and so she was so down on herself that she figured, why not keep it going? At least this way I can feel accepted by somebody. There's a lot of possibilities as to why she could have been here. Maybe she's just a young woman with really low self-esteem and a really low view of herself, and she thought this would help her feel accepted and needed and worthwhile and loved, even if only for a little while. But this was a position she put herself in that was literally life or death. She was breaking the seventh commandment. And the ironic thing at that time, based on their common law, he was not the adulterer in this. A man couldn't commit adultery. Only the woman who was married with another man could. So we look at her story oftentimes, and we're thankful for Jesus' response, and we pick on what the guys did, but have we ever stopped to go, why was she even in this place in the first place? Deep down, I believe she was there because deep down, she felt like, well, for whatever reason, this is all I'm worth. This is all I can do. This is all I have to offer. I'm not really somebody. And when you stop and think about it and you pull back, look at the beauty in this story that Jesus brought to her. This forgiveness and this non-condemnation is not just an act of not condemning the sin. It's also a step of him going, you know what? I don't condemn you. And even his statement of now go and leave your life of sin is a statement of you're worth more than this. No, these guys here, they were not treating you well. You are a pawn in what they're trying to do. Others have probably treated you bad. You've experienced all this, but what I'm here to tell you, and Jesus' response was, you are somebody. And you are worthwhile. And he was putting into action the belief that you're worth more than two sparrows. And letting her know that I know all the hairs that are on your head, and I love you, and I care about you. It is widely believed that this woman was Mary Magdalene, that became part of his ministry and walked with him. Why would she do that? Because he said, you're worthwhile. In my ministry, he said, just like it will be someday at Wendy's in Newburgh, everybody is somebody. And he changed her life. And sometimes we need our lives changed by hearing that again. Because sometimes we get ourselves in places where we don't believe that. And then we're told to go and love our neighbor. Imagine before she met Jesus, just for a moment, based on even what Cindy shared last week, imagine going and telling that woman, if you're Jesus and she's sitting in the crowd, go love your neighbor as you love yourself. How's she going to do that? She needed to be reminded by Jesus, I love you, and you're worthwhile, and I don't condemn you, and you're worth more than what you're doing. So go. Sometimes we need to be told everybody is somebody, and understand that genuine love and acceptance that somebody really cares about us. Jesus says the same thing to you. And maybe today we're struggling with that. In fact, if you look at the statistics that are going on with everything going on, I say that differently than I would have said 5 months ago. I shared with you last week that the report from the CDC was that overdoses and suicides have exceeded COVID deaths. Just found out today, another report came out, is that drinking and porn